Hi folks, today's video is actually about buying some stuff. Now local to me there's been a couple of things come up for sale and I want both. One of them is an Engl E650 Ritchie Blackmore signature amplifier and the other is a 1991 Ibanez Sabre, the S series, but it's 1991 made in Japan. Both are relatively inexpensive for what they are. I'm not saying cheap, but you know, guitar €300, amplifier is coming in at €350, which is phenomenal considering an S series made in Japan now you're looking at 2000 new and that amplifier is about €1,400 new. So both well worth it. What I want to do is put myself in the different scenario though, and one that you may be in. You have a couple of guitars, you have an amplifier, you might even have a couple of amps. You've seen some gear. What direction do you go? Do you rather have a huge collection of guitars, or more guitars, or do you want more amplifiers? Now, these days you can throw in the mix modelers and pedals and everything else, but we're going to stick to the two things. We're not even going to discuss cabinets. Amplifier or guitar, which one would you go for? And I kind of have my own mind made up on this already, but I'm going to go through the process of deciding with you. So what I've got here is I have got a made in Japan Ibanez, which is the best, most expensive anyway, guitar that I have. New, you're looking around €3,000. I also have got an Indonesian made Ibanez RG. And apart from putting a DiMarzio Evo 2 in the bridge, this is stock. And these were €350, they're now up to about €500. But again, you can pick these up for €200, €250 these days. So, my dearest Ibanez, my cheapest Ibanez. And I've got 4 amplifiers behind me. All of which cost in the similar ballpark to the Engl I'm looking for. The Jet City was €200. The Peavey, that's essentially a Soldano Hot Rod 50 Plus. If you're after a Soldano tone, check those out, they're amazing for that sound. Below that, the Peavey Windsor, which is a hot rodded Marshall JCM800 kind of tone. Behind me there, the Peavey Ultra Plus, which is one of the James Brown made in America Peaveys from around the 5150 era, the Mark I time. And a Bugera 333 XL, which is a Peavey clone of the JSX. And again, I bought the Bugera new, but again, €200 and you can pick them up. The Peavey Ultra Plus I paid $250, the Jet City was $200 and the Windsor was $300 with the 4x12 cabinet. So nothing overly expensive here, all perfectly good, really good giggable stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'll play both guitars through one of the amps. I'm going to use no effects, no delays, nothing like that. It's going to be that red cable you see there. I'm getting quite good at pointing at things. That red cable there straight into both guitars and let you hear stuff. Both need new strings, so that's quite a level playing field as well. And then I'm going to just play one of the guitars through all of the amps, running into 2 cabinets. And just let you hear that as well. And it's just going to be little edits of sound samples. And I'll zoom in and show you whichever amplifier it is. So you can get a brief taste. And I'm just going to have it on my main gain sounds, but not using any boosts. So this is just going to be the amp as the dry sound. So both guitars through one amp and then each of the amps, and I'll come back at the end and a bit more of a discussion. Could you please like and subscribe as well, and let's go. So here is guitar number 1. This is what you would get for a $3,000 Ibanez made in Japan. Forget the playability factor, you can make all of these play beautifully. But let's just go with your ears. This is what you hear playing this guitar into the crunch channel of that Peavey Ultra Plus. And then I will use the other Ibanez that costs 1/10 of the amount. So here we go. Do you buy another guitar? So there's one guitar. Now, I'll not pause the video, I'll just do a quick change. You'll hear the buzzing and everything as it's unplugged. And grab a cable. So, $3,000 guitar, €300 guitar. So there we go. Not a lot of difference actually sonically, personally. So, and playability actually, they're really very little for me. So now let's go and zoom into some amps. And we'll do the same amp again, and then I'll swap round. But because of uncabling and things, I haven't made myself an amp switcher yet. I'm going to do that. This will be some little sound samples. Back in a second. Okay, so here we have amp number 1, which is the Peavey Ultra Plus. It's going into a Harley Benton 4x12 with vintage 30s, and the Peavey Windsor own brand cab. So there's the two cabs and crunch channel. And this is my main overdriven sound I use. By the way, I'm just using, bring it over there, the cheap Ibanez. I'm not using the E-Gen, I'm just using the one made in Indonesia. Okay, amp number 2 coming up. So here's amplifier number 2. Would you spend your €300 on this amp? both based very much on the Peavey sound. They do sound very similar. Okay, so next amplifier. Okay, we're now on to the Peavey Windsor. So this has got a lot more of that Marshall growl to it than the Peavey Ultra Plus and the Bugera, which are a bit more American voiced. This is very much a Marshall sound. There you go. Now that one I don't normally use like that. I tend to use a boost in front of the Marshall, which really tightens up the sound of that one. But again, it's another flavour. Now on to the Jet City. Okay, now we're on to the CityJCA50, which is one of my favourite amplifiers I've got. Between it and the Peavey Ultra Plus really. But here we go. This is what a couple of €100 will get you from Jet City. So, conclusions. Now, I love all my guitars I have, and I always want more. I love the amplifiers I have, and I always want more. And I have no idea why that camera keeps going light and dark. I hope it's not coming out like this on the video, but it might be. Doesn't matter. Anyway, what I tend to sway towards these days are amplifiers. For me, although these are all medium and high gain amps, they all have very, very, very much their own character. And they respond differently to pedals and effects. Some better than others, some different, well, all different to be honest. But the gain structures are all so different that if I want to sound like 90s, early 90s Van Halen, I can go to the Jet City or the Peavey Ultra Plus. If I want to sound more Zakk Wylde type of thing, or 80s Iron Maiden, the Jet City does it too, so does that. They all kind of do, but you have to tweak the EQs a bit. But they're still not identical. I could never make each of these sound identical, or even close to identical. They always have their main characteristic will shine through. However, for me with the guitars, I do have a lot of different guitars, but I've got some in standard tuning. I've got some in E flat, I've got some in D. I've got one that I sometimes use in drop C sharp. You know, that's normal. And if you're gigging, yes, you need to have them at hand. You can't quickly switch round. In the last band I was in, we played in 2 different tunings. So I would always take 4 guitars with me. My main guitar and a spare in each tuning. However, in the band I'm in now, we tend to play in D standard, so I get away with bringing two guitars. In fact, for live I've only really used the one for about a year and a half, and that's the Kramer Pacer. It seems to be my go-to guitar for that band. But I swap out amplifiers more often, and for no apparent reason I like to have 3 channels quite a lot. So the Ultra Plus and the Bugera win in that for usability. But if I'm just playing a straight out rock without anything needing particularly much in the way of cleans, I'll try the Windsor. I've never really used it much, but I love using the Jet City. The downside of the Jet City for me is its effects loop doesn't actually play very nicely with the delays and things I have. It works, but it tends to take a little bit of the tone. I love just running that with effects in the front that I need. I'll have a phaser, a wah-wah, and an overdrive. That's it. No delays, no reverbs. I'll add them into the PA when I'm miking the cab. If I need a touch of reverb, I'll do it that way. So, my 350, if I was told that's it, that's all you're spending, you're not having both. Now I've got 2 things. One is a made in Japan Ibanez, good price, good investment, but I don't tend to buy for investment. I buy because I like them and I'll use them. Or the Ritchie Blackmore Engl. Now I do not have an Engl. I do not have that sound. So for me, yeah, I would go amplifier, because to me that's a different flavour, or very different flavour. Whereas the guitars, like I said, a €300 guitar or a €3,000 guitar, when you're running a lot of gain especially, and I will narrow this down to gain, you really can't decipher much. There's sometimes things in feel, one might be a bit brighter than the other. I did a video recently about the DiMarzio PAF Pro because it's a lower output pickup and it works really well with these darker amplifiers. But you can compensate and you can make anything really work. So yeah, I think what I want is like a 50 channel amp that I can get all those three, the sound of that, the 2 out of that, the 4 channels an Engl has. You know, why don't I buy a modeler? They're never quite the same. I've got some, I use them, I like them, but they're not the same. So I would love to know your thoughts. Would you tend to go guitar, or would you go amplifier? Yeah, so that's really it. Hope you liked some of the sound samples. I hope it actually even helped if you're just going, oh, what do they sound like? What do I prefer? You know, it's ballpark stuff. It's just set how I have. I haven't EQ'd anything to sound like anything else. That's just as they are before I put any effects on. So, quick video, hopefully fairly quick. I'll edit this together and it'll end up being 25 minutes long. But thank you very much, and I'll have another video for you soon. Maybe with some new gear. Maybe with 2 new bits of gear. See what I can get away with. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.